Perfect. So thank you guys all so much for joining our class tonight for money mapping. This is Laura, and she has a passion for learning and helping others, which is why she loves her job as a community educator. Getting to go out into the community and talk about finances to help others achieve their goals and learn more about personal finances is incredibly rewarding. Laura is a Colorado native and is an active member in the community. Shh, sorry, go on, Jeremy. Sorry, my little one came out here. Is an active member in the community and has experience in higher education and in the finance industry.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today. So we're going to be talking about budgeting, and then we'll get into a little bit of some debt repayments as well. In a little bit, we'll have in the chat some resources if you like to take notes or just need some supplemental information, they'll be there. And then if you have questions, feel free to put it in the chat as well. We'll be monitoring it, okay? So I'm going to start sharing my screen here and we'll start diving in. So, all right, y'all. Whoops. Yeah, okay. Sorry, just making sure I shared the right thing. So our takeaways today are going to be about budgeting methods. We're going to talk about what prevents us from sticking to our budget, right? So many things, including how can we save, right? How can we start saving while tackling debt and just as life is happening, okay? So we'll talk through all of those things and as well as resources that are available to you all in the communities. So first and foremost, I would love to hear from you all. Here's a few, but what words do you associate with budgeting? Like, what's your gut reaction? I would love to kind of hear from y'all in the chat. Put in your reaction to budgeting when I say that. Is anyone like, ew? Plan, money, stress, security. Dave Ramsey, yeah, that's a great resource too. A way to make my money work for me. Important, stressful, the crying emoji. I feel that so much. Yes. Awareness of finances. Ooh, good adjectives, y'all. Hopefully, though, by the end of this presentation, we'll have less of those stress and overwhelming reactions, and we'll have more on that knowledge and a plan for our money and a way to make our money work for us, okay? Thanks for sharing some of your thoughts too. Appreciate it. When we think about our money, we want to think about where are we going with that, okay? So what is our financial destination that we want to get to? Most of us, that's just having some sort of financial security, whatever that looks like to us. So we need to figure out where we're starting from. What checking accounts do we have? What savings accounts do we have? Do we have retirement accounts? What does our debt situation look like? So just getting a really good picture of our financial landscape, how it is right now, can just help us figure out, okay, how can I take what I have now and get to where I want to be? Oftentimes, that's going to be looking back and figuring out, where did my money go? What did I even spend it on? A lot of times you'll be surprised it's mostly food and household items and then some random splurge items, right? Those are typically those three things that kind of prevent us from sticking to our budget. So if we can look back at least the last month and figure out on average, how much did we spend on food? Or how much did we spend on entertainment? Kind of whatever category that you want to focus on first can help you. If you tackle everything within your budget, that's where it can feel so overwhelming, right? So if we just stick with one category that we just want to focus on for 1 month at least and build a good habit with that relationship, we can then build from there. Oftentimes that's going to figure out, where are we going, right? Do we have any life goals coming up? education, maybe just figuring out maybe a weekend getaway with the family. It could be paying off some debt that we have. It could be saving up for a car down payment or whatever, right? So just establishing some of those goals that we have in place can really help us stay accountable to ourselves when we are making purchases. If we're just spending willy-nilly and don't have a purpose to that spending, it's going to be really hard for us to establish any sort of financial goal. Okay. So you want to figure out how we're spending our money now and where we want to go with it. So looking ahead can really help us. So whether it's just figuring out that goal that we have, whether it's a life event, it could just be trying to get a car, but then starting to prioritize that in our budgets and in our day-to-day lives. Okay. If our plan is simply just I want to pay off debt or I want to have some savings, an emergency account, then we're going to have to start having that as a priority in our budgets and just our mindset when we're out and about shopping. When it comes to life events, especially medical, or like adding a new family member to our life, figuring out what resources do we have. That way we can have all of that piled together and it makes it a little bit more less stressful if we need to rely on some of those resources because we already put in the work to figure out where those resources might be coming from. Okay. Now, this is just with life events, but we can do it with anything. So, really, when it comes to budgeting, y'all, it's a muscle. And if we don't use it often and regularly, we're going to lose it. Okay. So, creating budgets is a skill. It's not just something that just happens. You're going to have to put a little bit of work into it. Okay. And not every budgeting strategy is going to work for everyone. There's different strategies that work better for some folks. Sometimes they'll work for a little bit and then we kind of fall back on our old habits. So we have to try a new way. So we kind of get that re-energized into budgeting. Okay. So it's not a one size fits all situation. Now, have y'all heard of the envelope method? Those of you who probably put Dave Ramsey in there probably know about it. He definitely kind of made it more popular. But the envelope method is where we have an envelope and we write on there food, dining out, rent, utilities, etc. Whatever buckets that we want to start budgeting for. And we will be putting X amount of money into those envelopes. For instance, if we know on average we spend $450 on groceries each month, then that's how much we're going to put in that envelope. And so every time we go to the grocery store or Walmart or whatever, we will bring that envelope with us. And once we run out of money in that envelope for that category, we are done in that category. We're done shopping for it. Okay, so it can be really helpful for us to kind of have that limit in place and that physical reminder that, hey, I am budgeting for this category. This is a limit I set for myself. And then you can also do it digitally, which I see someone in the chat put that they're doing that. That's amazing. So you can do it digitally. You can have different debit cards for different categories. I can't speak for every financial institution, but at least with Ent, you could have 13 debit cards if you really wanted. Okay, so you could do this in that method as well. But again, with the envelope method, it's really nice because we are limiting ourselves to the amount that we're putting into there. So it can just kind of help us with certain categories that we might tend to overspend in. I honestly will probably start trying this method just with food because I love grocery shopping. It gets me in trouble with my budget all the time, okay? So I might try this method, see if it works a little better for me for sticking to that budget that I want to create. Now, zero sum is when we're allocating everything. It's very similar to the envelope method where we're creating those envelopes and categories, but this one is more so just listing it all out and making sure every penny has a function. So when we put stuff into savings, it's not just savings. It is saving for XYZ. It is a purposeful amount, okay? It's not just kind of a random kind of designation, okay? Now, automatic, I highly recommend a lot of us start to utilize for certain things, especially bill pay. If we're able to set up automatic payments for our credit cards, for any of our other bills, just to make sure we're getting those things in on time, it can just be a big, stress reducer for us to be able to have some of that automation happen. The other piece to it is just having automatic transfers go into savings. So that way we can automatically save a little bit, okay, without remembering to go in there and transfer money into our savings. So highly recommend it. Now, reverse is typically where a lot of people think about budgeting in a negative way, because with reverse category kind of strategy, we are putting anything extra toward that debt repayment or toward that savings goal that we have before we allow ourselves to have some of the wants in our life. Okay. So we are putting anything extra there before we set a budget for dining out or movies with friends. Okay. So that one is where budgeting can kind of get a negative opinion just because you are cutting all the fun stuff out of the budget to accomplish those goals. However, it can be a very useful strategy for us for accomplishing that saving goal or debt repayment. And then there's another method too called 50/30/20%. And this one is nice because it's just three categories then that we are thinking about, our needs, wants, and savings. Okay, so our needs are food, a place to live, and reliable transportation, whatever that looks like for us. Okay, where wants then are the streaming services, the going out to eat, the treats at Starbucks or what have you. And then 20% towards savings. And I will say this 20% can also include debt repayment. Okay, so if we are having to pay off some debt, this 20% can also include that. So those are some of the strategies that we can kind of start to implement to start designing how we're going to stick to our budget. But when we are creating our budget, this is just like a sample budget. I do believe we put in an Excel. I will get it in there. I apologize, I forgot to do that. But I'll get you an Excel version as well, where you guys can enter in all of your expenses and kind of see how you're doing on your budget too, okay? But we would list all of our income, and then we are going to design what are all the stuff that, where's our money going, right? So how we get these numbers, y'all, we really need to start focusing on tracking. So first things first, we're going to track our budget. There is a tracker worksheet in the chat. You just may have to scroll up a bit, okay? And really just start focusing on where your money is going, track it, see what category it fits in. And then that will help you figure out, on average, how much you're spending in these categories so you can come up with a number for groceries. Okay. You can also go back and look at your statements and calculate how much you're spending on groceries just by looking at like the Walmart, Kroger, etc. on your bank statements and credit cards. But those of you who use cash primarily, that's going to be a lot harder for you unless you keep receipts, right? But again, you want to find an average that you're spending on these categories. That's how you're going to come up with these numbers. And then if you want to then start to save more, then you might have to figure out, okay, where can I cut from this? Is it possible for me to get my groceries down to $3.50? Probably not right now with how high groceries are right now, but there's other things that maybe we can cut from travel, dining, and entertainment, right? So that would be how you would then start to kind of design your budget, is figuring out those averages so you can put them into a template sort of like this and start to track and see how well you're doing. So when it comes, sorry, I'm gonna skip that. When it comes to our budgets, just like life, we need to include our values. If we value family time, and that means, getting a treat for every Friday night, we have family movie night with the dollar little candies, then we want to start including that in our budget. Okay. If we're not including that in our budget, we're kind of then thinking of those purchases as impulse buys when they're truly something we value and we want to start putting an emphasis on. Okay. So you don't want to cut all of everything. You want to start looking at what do you value and how can that be included in your budgets. And sometimes that might be tweaking it. So instead of maybe going to the movie theater, we're watching stuff at home, right? So there are some ways that we can make some of our values a little cheaper for us. But again, we want to make sure they're included somewhere in our budget so we actually stick to our budget. If we value sporting events, like doing something with sports, and we never include it in our budget, then that's going to be really sad for us for a long time. And we're not really going to stick to that budget because we cut the thing that we really enjoy out of life. Okay. It's just like dieting. If we cut it so extreme, like we're not going to stick to it for very long. Okay. So you want to have those treats, those things that you enjoy in life, just stick it in your budget. Okay. So you're planning for those things and putting it into place. And that could be goals. So again, a goal of saving up for a new vehicle for your family. And then we want to make sure then that it's part of the importance for everybody. So everybody's on board with our goals, with this financial change. Okay. And sometimes that just means our mindset needs to be there, that we are truly locked in on this vision of what we want to be budgeting for, what we value. And sometimes that means like we need to wait a day before we purchase something, especially Amazon or TikTok Shop or any of the other like fun ways that we shop online. Okay. That just kind of get us. So sometimes it just means we need to take a pause, a break when it comes to shopping. So the other thing that we can do to help us with our money is to build that emotional connection to it. So in your accounts, at least with Ed and a few other places that I know of, you can name your accounts. Okay. Highly recommend you all do that. Give it a nickname. Okay. That's called a nickname usually. And put in your goals that you have. So here, this person's wanting to save for a car in a couple of years. Okay. So they've already saved 3,000. They're going to continue to build on that. And if they take money out of here for something other than a car, they're going to feel a little guilty from taking away from their goal. Okay. At least I know I would. So you're building that connection to that money in that account. So it's helpful to break it out into different saving ideas, whether, it's a trip or a car down payment. It could even be, you can label it for your kids' names if you're trying to save up something for them. And again, you're going to feel a little guilty taking from it for something else unrelated. Okay. So you're just building that emotional connection to our money. How many of you, though, you spend cash easier than you do with like a debit card or credit? Anybody spend cash a little more freely? It's okay. You don't have to call yourself out, but some of us do, and that's because we view it very differently than we might a card. And the flip side too, some people view physical cash as a lot harder to spend than spending on a plastic card. Okay, whether it's a debit card or credit card. So sometimes our personalities are going to work for us, whether it'll help us or hurt us. Okay, so kind of get to know yourself a little bit on how you spend money and if it's different with cash versus card. And that might help you too to kind of build that connection to your money. Yeah, see, you don't like to break those big battles and spend cash. So yeah, it's relatable, right? On the flip side, I have no problem spending cash. I have a lot harder time swiping my card. So it's kind of interesting. Um, so glad you guys are kind of in tune with that. I appreciate you chiming in there. So when it comes to our savings, there's a couple different philosophies that we can kind of look at saving. This first one is periodic. Now, this is for us to use regularly and often. A great one that I always suggest is just like in this picture is car stuff. Okay. So if we have a car, splitting our car registration out every month and putting it into savings can really help us. So, for example, mine is $300 for that car registration. And that would be a big chunk of change for me to come up with in the month that it's due. And so I split that up and divide it by the months. And I put $80 in every month. So it's a little more streamlined for me. And then come September, mine is in September, I already saved up that amount for that car registration. Okay. So it keeps my budget streamlined throughout the year. Another one, especially with kiddos, is for holiday spending. So on average, most folks will spend $800 on the holiday season if it's a one person. Okay, so multiply that. If you have a family, you're looking more so around like 2,000 on average for the holidays with food and gifts and all of that. Okay, um, so thinking about that, splitting that up throughout the year for us can just kind of help ease that burden, ease that stress and reliance on credit card come the holiday season. So thinking about those things that we can kind of save up throughout the year for. And then again, it just keeps our budget more the same rather than these really big ups and downs. So I hope that makes sense. I also use periodic for, I get my hair cut as like a special treat for myself, self-care every quarter. So like I put that into my periodic savings too. It's like saving up for my little haircut. Okay. It can be something like that as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be big expenses. It can be small. And then when it comes to emergency savings, we call these safety net as well. So with this one, I will tell you financial experts will tell us to put 3 to 6 months of our expenses into an emergency account. And I don't know about y'all, but that is a huge number that's unreasonable to save. So a better rule of thumb is to save $1,000. That will typically get us through a time of need with our insurance deductibles, whether it's medical or car. But if we can just build upon that over the years, then we will be in a better financial situation. So just starting smaller can just help us with starting an emergency account. So just get started. The biggest thing is putting it somewhere that you have easy access to it. So a high yield savings account or a certificate of deposit even is a good option because you can access it whenever you need to. With CDs, you are kind of locked in for a time, but it's not that big of a deal if you need to pull it out. It just will be a small fine compared to if we stick it in like a retirement account. It's a lot more difficult for us to figure out how to get that money. Okay. So just think through some different options of like where you want to store your emergency fund. And then to calculate your goals, so whether it is $1,000 or it is maybe trying to do that 3 months of expenses or any type of goal that you have in mind for it. But the biggest thing, especially as a family unit, is to figure out what is an emergency to you all. Okay. Is it when the water heater breaks? Or is that something we would save for differently? Or is it when we lose our job or a medical expense, right? So thinking about what to you as a family unit you'll tap into this emergency account for can just help you figure out those goals, but also be on the same page of what this emergency account is for. And then know your unknowns. I know that seems silly to say, but we know that like if we are in a home, that certain things are going to break over time. If we own a vehicle, same thing, things are going to kind of break down. We might need new tires. If we have, medical history, maybe even saving up for that, okay? Yeah, money market account is a great one. Sorry, I'm just looking at the chat. Money market accounts are great. Usually get better interest for those as well. And then high yield savings, again, are really great because you're earning more. So what I mean by high yield savings, that's like 3% or more, where typical savings are like 0.0 something, right? So pennies versus dollars that you could get at a high yield savings. So Great job. I love the chat, y'all. So again, with the emergency account, just get started, even if it's $1,000 to start point, okay? And then we can look toward the future too, so the longer term things. And most financial folks will consider long term 2 years out, okay? For some of us, that's like gone in a blink. But just thinking through just like some things that aren't just a year from now, that would be considered long term. And we can invest those in different vehicles. So whether it's down payments, it could be educational expenses, vacations, and of course, retirement. So those are kind of the three different kind of philosophies of saving that we can kind of break down our savings into those kind of different categories for ourselves. Now, when we are creating our budget or when we're trying to figure out those savings, budget busters happen, right? All the time. So our spending habits, y'all, come into play. Do we like to just go around and walk around Target or Walmart just for fun, just to get steps in, right? If we do, we're typically going to be walking out of there with something. Okay, so our spending habits can come into play. Who we're shopping with can also make or break our budgets as well. I personally know if I go shopping with my mother, I'm going to spend way more than I ever intended to. Okay, because we just get to talking and just we enjoy it, right? So just being aware of some of those spending habits that y'all have can help you with kind of checking yourself and figuring out, okay, like what's happening here, okay? So again, just kind of thinking about impulse buying, right? The pure impulse buying is like the snacks at the cash registers, okay? Where it's simply like, ooh, that looks yummy. The other is like reminder things. So we get push notifications or we get like little coupons in the mail that kind of remind us like, oh, I can go spend some money. Okay. Same with suggestions, right? If we're scrolling on our phone and we see some lovely marketing, we might then be tempted to buy something. Okay. Planned impulse buys are, I know that sounds silly to say, but it is kind of those, oh, someone said field trips and class events. Yeah, those could definitely kind of fall into that category of just things that just pop up that kind of are planned, kind of not planned, right? So just being aware of some of those. Now, when it comes to retail therapy, we will either shop when we're happy to continue to feel happy, or we're going to go shopping because we're sad and we want to feel happy. Okay. We as humans get an endorphin rush when we purchase something. Okay. And it's not just male versus female, all of us do. I think females, we just tend to feel it more. So we tend to fall into this category of retail shopping. So, ways that we can combat retail therapy is figuring out when we are shopping, if it is to make us feel happy or continue feeling happy. What are things that we could do instead of shopping that can get us that same feeling? Whether it's just going for a walk, maybe calling an old friend. What I personally find more helpful is going to the library because I can take something home for free. Okay. Gives me that same feeling of bringing something back home. And now that we have to use reusable bags, it's even easier because I'm using the same bag that I would at Target or Walmart. Okay. And they have board games, books, DVD. Like it's not just, typical book. You can get a bunch of other stuff at the library. So that's one option, right? The other is just kind of figuring out what we can do. Now, when it comes to unnecessary fees, that's when we pay stuff late just because we forgot about it, or we are paying something that we no longer want to use anymore, and we just keep forgetting to cancel it, okay? Or it's being charged for a checking account. There are so many free checking accounts. We can transfer our money over instead, okay? So figuring out some of those unnecessary fees that we may not need to be paying anymore, okay? So when we are thinking about budgets and how to avoid them, budget busters, we want to make a list, y'all. Okay. That will first and foremost help us the most. Someone said to even online shopping and pick up at the store. Another fabulous opportunity for us to even avoid the temptation of the aisles, right? So, really just kind of thinking through that and then reviewing our budget often and regularly. Okay, so again, like I said before, it's a muscle that we kind of have to use. And if we don't check it regularly, we're going to lose the practice of budgeting. So, checking in with it, seeing how we're doing, tracking our things. Yeah, muscle memory. That's what I've been looking for. Thank you. Um, the other thing too is just waiting a couple of days or even just overnight to buy something. I always like, especially for online shopping, just closing my computer or flipping my phone over and asking myself what I put in the cart. If I don't even remember what I just put in the cart, I don't need it. I can just close that app. Now, if I do remember, I then ask myself, how much is it? Okay. If I don't remember the price point, then I probably don't need it either. Okay. And if I am like, is it in my budget? Is it something I actually need? Or is this just impulse buy? Okay, so just asking yourself questions when you're about to purchase something can just help stop yourself from actually making that purchase. Yeah, look over the cart before we check out. Exactly. Now, the other thing too, especially for like Amazon, and if you do TikTok shop or any of the like Temu or any of those, don't store your credit card information in there. Okay. Because if you have to get off your butt and go find your wallet wherever it is in the house and enter that in, you're right there already probably not going to do that. Okay. And you're going to force yourself to wait on that purchase. So, just some little tips and tricks there when it comes to online things. The other thing is just being aware of marketing tactics. So when it comes to the grocery store in particular, everything that we want is on the outside perimeter, right? Our dairy, the meat, the produce. It's like in this nice little U shape. Okay, so just trying to avoid the middle aisles as much as possible, figuring out where stuff is so we can get in and out as quickly as possible. Yeah, I someone said I know my credit card information without having to know it. I'm the same way. I'm really good at memorizing numbers, like it just clicks. So I do remember mine too. So try your best to try and forget it, but that tip sadly won't work for you. Um, but again, when we're going shopping, just being like quick about it can help us. So the songs that they play in the grocery stores and stores in general, they're designed to make us linger longer. Okay. They've done studies about like the beat of the music, and they pick songs that do make us linger longer in stores. Okay. So even just putting headphones on when you're going grocery shopping so you don't hear anything and you're like focused can help you. Okay. Advertising and marketing folks spend a lot of money trying to figure out how we can spend more money. Okay, so they're going to get that. I'm curious from you all, go ahead and put in the chat, how much do you think the average person, like household, spends on subscription services a month? This does include internet. Okay, so anywhere from 50 to 400 here. I'm kind of curious. So I'm seeing a lot of 200s, maybe 100. 350. Ooh, someone even jumped the gun there and said 500. Mm, always curious what folks think. Yeah, and if you have your number too, obviously that might impact you a little bit too. Okay, cool. Uh, a lot of you were really close on that 200. So 219 is the average. Okay, some of us definitely spend more than that. Others mooch off of others, right? So they spend less. Um, But yeah, that is the average that we spend on subscription services. That is not to say that that is a bad thing. It's just to be aware of how much we are actually spending on these services. So that way we can think about it and be like, Is this worth putting in my budget, or do I need to reflect on this number more? Okay. So when it comes to streaming services or subscription services in general, so many people, 74% y'all, say it's easy to forget about reoccurring subscription charges. I will tell you, I had to get the Wall Street Journal subscription for a class of mine forever ago, and it was $4 a month. Okay. It was such a small little charge that I like glanced over it all the time, forgot about it for 4 years, y'all. Okay. That adds up. I certainly would have rather spent that $4 on a coffee versus a subscription I wasn't even using, right? So that's why it's really important that we do really look at our accounts and like really look at what it is that we are spending. Okay. Had I not, like, if I had looked a little closer, like, hey, what is that $4? I would have then been like, oh, yeah, shoot, I forgot to cancel the subscription that I no longer use or need. Okay. Now, this one, 56% say they don't share streaming services with someone. Unfortunately, now, yes, it's kind of cracked down, right, on sharing between families. But some folks, even in the same household, both pay for Hulu when you don't really necessarily need that, right? So just kind of, if you are in a family unit, just kind of checking in with each other, making sure you're not paying for the same subscription, okay? Especially when it comes to music. That's usually the one that most family units aren't aware of, like how many of them in the household have the exact same music subscription where they could bundle it as a family and get it for cheaper. Okay. And then, just like me, 42% of people continue to pay for reoccurring monthly subscriptions they know we're no longer using. Okay. So check in with yourself, be realistic about if you're truly using that subscription service or not. Gym memberships in particular, especially Planet Fitness, they get us because it's such a small charge that we're like, yes, no, I will go to the gym. And we feel guilty canceling it if we're no longer using it. So just have that reality check of yourself of like, am I actually using that service or not? And cancel it, okay? Use that money how you would rather be using it, okay? Not to shame anyone on that, but that's just one that gets a lot of people in particular. Okay. All right. So the other piece to budgeting in particular is this idea of lifestyle inflation. Okay. This is where we bust our butt. We've been living paycheck to paycheck. We get that awesome raise, and then we increase our spending. Maybe we upgraded our car when we didn't really need to. So we're spending more. We're back at living paycheck to paycheck again. We're busting our butt. We get that extra income again, but then we continue to upgrade stuff that we don't really need to. Okay. It's not to say that we should never upgrade stuff. It's just if we're living comfortably where we're at, then we want to just put that extra money towards savings, whether it's for something later, or invest that money. So that way that money is working for us rather than just trying to upgrade something just for the sake of upgrading it. So again, it's just that kind of cycle of like, as you get more money, you spend more money, kind of mentality. Okay. All right. So when it comes to budgeting, I kind of threw a lot at you of like, keep track of this, do this. So there are apps and things out there that we can use. So one of them is a lot of the time our financial institutions will have some sort of thing like this where we can log into all of our accounts and tie them together. So our credit cards and our bank statements are kind of talking to each other and create a budget for us. So they will kind of calculate, okay, we spend $500 on groceries every month based on how many times we go to Walmart, King Supers. Okay. So it is kind of nice because it'll do some of that budgeting piece for you. I will say I'm very bad about looking at this tool. So for me, apps on my phone aren't very helpful. But for other people, this is very helpful to be able to kind of log on to something on their phone, have a quick glance on if they're doing good on their budget or not. Okay. Find a way that works for you keeping track of your expenses, what you're saving, what you're doing with that money, and then just stick with it, right? So I personally love pen and paper. I'll just show you. So I use a little bullet journal here, and I list out, all of my expenses, my bill pay, and I do little doodles, okay, because that's something I enjoy doing. So I'm more likely to stick to this because it's just something that I can do while on the couch. I can check in with myself and at my goals, okay? So find a method for you that works for you, whether it's Excel, an app, pen and paper, okay? Now, if you're like, holy Toledo, I don't know where to begin with budgeting. We do have financial coaches, and I'll share this slide in a little bit again as well, that can help us when it comes to budgeting. Okay, so just a person that can just kind of sit down with you, help you establish your budget. Okay, you do not need to be an ENT member to utilize our financial coaches. Okay, so anyone in the community, any age in the community too. So if there's any teenagers on the call too, like you guys are welcome to use our financial coaches as well. So I'm gonna share my or unshare my screen real quick so I can bring up just another slide deck on that repayment real quick. So but any questions before I kind of move on to like a little bit more in depth on debt repayment stuff that I can help with, at least with budgeting, a high overview?
No, this has been really helpful. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Glad to hear that feedback. Okay. So it doesn't look like I'm seeing any questions in the chat here. So sorry, give me a moment, y'all. Let's just click on a bunch of buttons. Okay. So this is a little thing to kind of tie into our budgets and like maybe why we're not sticking to our budgets, okay? And this can help us figure out maybe kind of how we got into some financial situations that we did, okay? Especially when it comes to debt. But our money beliefs have a big impact on how we view money, how we interact with different financial tools, such as credit cards and loans. Okay. And these are usually learned in childhood and passed through generations. So, for instance, my family, my grandma used to just never have food in the pantry. And so my mom had a very food insecurity household. So when I was growing up, just always had tons of food. And I have continued that legacy of like, if my pantry looks ever so slightly not full, I panic that I won't have food. Okay. So these are things that kind of just get passed on from generation to generation that we need to think about and recognize like this is a behavior that I'm doing based on something that I've learned in my childhood. And usually they can be often unconscious until we kind of do that self-reflection of like, oh, that's why I'm doing this. Okay. They can also be partial truths. So you don't have to call yourself out or anything, but just think, did anyone ever learn when they were growing up like credit cards are evil, that you should never have a credit card? I'm not seeing any head nods, but that's okay. So
I
that's
did. My
yeah.
family was well, my parents were both really bad with money, so every time they had credit cards, they always maxed them out and could never pay them back. So I always in my mind was like, nope, I don't want them.
Yeah, right. Which is a kind of partial truth, right? If we use them incorrectly, kind of irresponsibly, where we're just not budgeting for those expenses, we're treating it differently than we would just our debit cards, right? Then yeah, we can kind of get in this mindset of like, oh, credit cards are evil. They're not worth it. When in reality, they can be a really awesome tool for us to build credit if we're paying them off in full every month and not incurring that interest, right? So they can be partial truths where it's like, yes, and, right? So again, when it comes to our money beliefs, just kind of recognizing that like sometimes we do have these beliefs happening, but we're responsible for whatever those outcomes are. Okay. So when it comes to thinking about negative money beliefs and behaviors that we're doing, we need to recognize when they're happening. So for me, with my example of like when my pantry looks a little scarce, I need to recognize like it's okay. I do have enough food for my family. We're okay. I don't need to go buy something, right? So just kind of taking that moment before I'm making decisions can just help ground me in that situation. Okay. And then checking in on our regular finances again, I can't stress that enough of just that muscle memory of just checking in. How are we doing on our expenses? Okay. Creating goals for ourselves in step laddered format too can be really helpful. So I'm just going to read this. Oh, yeah. I love that you're recognizing some of these. Thank you for sharing. The other thing too is just to create a realistic spending plan for yourself. Okay. So again, if we have a really lofty goal of saving like $300 a month, but we don't really make enough to even save that much, then we're not going to stick to anything and it's going to be really difficult. And we're going to start feeling negatively about our own selves for not hitting that goal. So we want to make sure whatever our goals are, that they're appropriate for how much we're making and for how much we need to actually be spending. Okay. That way, again, we're not recreating some negative beliefs about how well we're budgeting. Okay. It just means we need to adjust those numbers to reflect what's really happening. Okay. We do have a ton of resources on ent.com/education center. I'm just throwing that out there. So if anyone does need anything else, feel free to reach out to me too. So when I was talking about that inflation lifestyle, this spending cycles kind of come into play of that. Are we living paycheck to paycheck or are we prioritizing certain things? Okay. So earn, spend is that living paycheck to paycheck kind of life cycle. Okay. To get us out of this, ways that we can help ourselves is really creating those categories and then start figuring out what is something that we can do to then start saving. Okay. Savings will help us get us out of this kind of loop of earning, spending. Okay. Now, the next cycle, then, though, we tend to rely on credit. And then we get into trouble with credit because we're borrowing too much versus what we're earning. Okay. So with this one, just kind of figuring out what is that spending plan looking like and reducing that reliance on credit cards and loans. Okay. So figuring out how can we live with what we're truly bringing in. And then earn, spend, save, we are starting to save for stuff. We're identifying reasons to save, but they're low on the totem pole, okay? So we're not putting it as a priority. So in this situation, we would want to start saving before we're spending, in that we are planning for everything, okay? We are creating that budget and a plan for our money, okay? That's what budgeting is, that plan for our money. We're going to start trying to pay ourselves first. So just like that periodic savings I was mentioning before, putting a little bit away for those expenses that we have throughout the year, again, to keep our budget more streamlined, can really help us with that saving piece before we're spending that money. Okay, hope that makes sense a little bit. Now it's not important that you remember like what all of these cycles are. Just recognize that we can kind of bounce around between these, especially throughout the year. Sometimes we might be really good and be in this like saving mentality, and then something happens. We're burnt out at work and we're going out to eat more. So then we kind of fall into this earn, spend, right? And then we can just kind of readjust again, figure out how we can get back into this earn, save, spend. Okay. All right. So ways that we can help ourselves is to improve our cash flow. Now, This can be really difficult for a lot of us to just manage, especially with raising a family. So it's decreasing our expenses or increasing our income. And those are the two ways that we can kind of help improve our cash flow. Let's tackle that expenses. Anyone have any good tips on how you stick to a plan when you're shopping? Whether it's stuff we were mentioning before or anything new. And while you feel free to put it in the chat, I see some awesome stuff in here too. List and sticking to it. So having that list can really help. Someone does Walmart delivery, so we don't do the impulse buy. Yeah, fabulous. Okay, so you're recognizing maybe where you can help. That's perfect. I love that. Yeah, so exactly. Who we're shopping with can really make or break our budget. So yeah, not taking our kiddos to the store can certainly help. Depending on age appropriate, of course, but maybe giving them a task of adding up how much everything is costing when they're putting it in the cart can help a little bit. So you're giving them a focus. Um, but yeah, certainly I use cash when it runs out. That's the end of the budget. Perfect. Yeah. I also take the calculator. Yay. I love this. So again, we talked through some of these, right? So being aware of store tactics and marketing, shopping our pantry first is a big one. I'm gonna make fun of one of my coworkers, but she has 8 cinnamon spices in her pantry, because she kept forgetting that she had bought it. Okay, so she just kept buying it every time she went to the store. So she finally just brought each of us a little cinnamon spice thing as like a present because she's like, I don't know what to do with this. So just a silly example, but if we continued kind of doing that on habit, like that can add up depending on what we're purchasing, right? And then planning out our meals and only buying what we need. If anyone is super good at meal planning, I highly recommend you toot your horn and share that with others and like how you do that, okay? Because that can be a really cost-effective way for us if we can meal plan and maximize our meals and really stretch out that grocery budget. Okay. And then shopping online, generic and seeking discounts. Now, seeking discounts, y'all, that does not mean just because something is on sale, it's for me, right? So we need to have it on our list. And then if it just happens to be on sale, awesome. That's a bonus thing, okay? It does not mean that we need to buy it just because it's on sale. Okay. I love some of these other tips too, of like having like a dollar amount for a treat for the kiddo. So then they know that they're already getting something, but they know that dollar figure. So that definitely is something that's helpful. Meal plan according to what's on sale. Yes, Christy, that's such a great one. Love it. Keep throwing in some good ways that you guys are learning how to save as well. The sound, okay. You all can hear me, right? Someone said, okay, thank you. I was like getting nervous there with the chat. Okay. So with our bills too, I'm definitely trying to reduce our rate. So if we have cable or internet or something like that, always call them and see if there's any promotional dates that they can give you. So that way you can get some more free money for other things, right? Depending on what it is, and we'll talk through this, but maybe refinancing something so we're spending less on interest. Okay. Then a lot of different other ways that we can save money or cut expenses is reviewing the subscription, going to free activities. Here in Colorado, we have so many fun things that we can go do for free, right? Just a little gas money. And then comparing and carpooling stuff, consulting a tax expert if that's an issue for you, right? So there's lots of different ways that we can save, not just at the grocery store. Okay. Now, other ways that we can improve our cash flow, this is where it can get really difficult for a lot of us and it's a little harder, but I'm setting those long-term goals. So what do we want to hope to have in 10 years, 15 years? evaluating our budget, right? Constantly going back to that. Can't stress that enough. But selling something, getting a second job or side hustle, again, that is not realistic for everybody, but that could be something that then helps us with kind of increasing our cash flow. The other is asking for a raise or maybe side projects or something that we can do to increase our spend or our income, right? So when it comes to financial transitions too, ooh, I love this call out. The library has a culture pass. Yes, they also have like free zoo tickets, to the parks, like lots of places. So yes, the culture passes where it's at, y'all, at the library. Ooh, I hope take a moment, y'all, and read some of these in the chat of like how y'all are helping each other. I love this. Eat with a family member, a close friend at their house. Ooh, I love it. Yeah, cooking with people can be such a great treat too. Okay, so when we are in a financial transition, whether it's, we lose our job or we added additional family members or just something going on, right? Some medical expense. Just trying to figure out how long will this transition last, okay? If we can create a new spending plan for it, let's do that. Let's figure out where we can cut some costs, but then finding additional help, whether it's our community, 211, United Way, fabulous resource for a lot of things. They have a whole program for utilities. Okay, so if we're struggling with some bills, applying for that utility program so they can kind of help offshoot some of the expenses that we have, right? Maybe it is going to food pantries, whatever it is, just getting some of that additional help so we can stretch what money we do have in other ways. Okay. But then we want to start focusing on preparing for the next transition. Okay. So setting up those emergency funds and those goals. Okay. Now, can be very difficult for us to navigate some hardship. Okay. So first thing we need to prioritize is our budget. What can we do? Researching programs that can help us, whether it's a medical program that can help us with our medical bills, whether it's 211, whatever, any other resources that we have, okay? Some that you all might know about in your communities, right? But then figuring out how can we downsize some of our expenses so that way we can get through this a little bit quicker. So whether it's using unnecessary expenses or just figuring out what we can sell around our house. But the other thing is we need to take care of ourselves. Mental health is a huge component, especially financial hardship causes a lot of mental health issues, okay? So making sure we're taking care of ourselves can be very helpful for us to just navigating how can we get out of this financial situation, okay? So whether it's just eating a lovely meal, like some folks said, even just having a meal at a friend's house every once in a while, that is a fantastic way that we can just help energize ourselves as well. Maybe it's just getting enough sleep, okay? The other thing is like maybe it is we need to learn a new skill so we can improve ourselves at work so we can get that next promotion. Or it's refreshing that resume and applying for other positions. Okay. So whatever it is that will kind of give us peace of mind to get through that hardship. Okay. Now, when we're talking about debt specifically, debt can be super stressful and it can be expensive. And it can just prevent us from doing some of the stuff that we actually want to be doing, like that family vacation or getting a new vehicle, whatever the case may be. So when we are thinking about our debt, we need to figure out, we need to organize it, okay? So we can start then tackling it. Do we have credit card debt? Do we have student loan debt? Do we have medical bills that we need to figure out? Do we have a home or auto loan, right? Do we have a personal loan? Whatever debt we may have, okay? I want you to list them all out and you're going to calculate what the balance is, okay? So if you don't know the balance, figure out the balance. If you don't know the interest rate, right, we're going to write down the interest rate for them. we're going to figure out our payment that we do need to make monthly. So what is that monthly payment? And then what are the terms? Okay. For credit card, obviously that's indefinite, but like for loans, like is it 72 more months? Is it 12 months? Is it 10 months, etc.? Okay. So that's all the information we're going to gather on all of our debts. And depending on the strategy that we want to use, we're going to use certain things from this list to help us pay that debt down. Okay. So we get it organized, we gather that information, and then we can figure out which of these strategies that I'm going to go over will help us the most. Okay. So the first method is called snowball method. Y'all probably may have heard of this one. But this one, we are going to be arranging our debt based on the balance. Okay. So we're going to gather it and we're going to pay smallest to largest balance in this strategy. Okay. So if we have a debt of $1,000 for like a personal loan and then a car loan of $25,000, okay, we're going to pay that $1,000 one down first. So what we're going to do is we're going to find any extra that we can put toward paying off our debt. So let's just say $5 is the max we can figure out how to pay extra each month, okay? So we will still make the monthly payments for everything. But that extra $5 that we have to put toward our debt, we're going to put toward that monthly payment of the smallest debt first. Okay. Once that smallest debt is paid off, we're going to use that monthly amount that we were paying for that debt plus that $5 and use it to then add to the monthly payment of the second largest debt. Okay. And so forth until we're done paying off our debt. Okay. So as long as we have the debt, we're paying the same amount monthly all the time, but like how it's broken out is going to change as we're paying stuff off. In this method, we get that nice confidence boost and that check, like I did it, I accomplished something, okay? So it can be really nice and energizing for us to just feel like we're accomplishing something because we're getting things off of our plate. You can always start in this method, and then once you kind of get that confidence rolling, you can switch to a different method, okay? It looks like someone had success with this method, so that's awesome. Now, the other method is called the avalanche method, which you probably may have heard of this as well. But this one will eliminate our most expensive debt first because we're prioritizing the one with the highest interest rates. Okay, so with this one, we would organize our debts based on the interest rates. So if we have, a debt with 5% interest, 8%, and 10% interest, we're going to focus on that 10% interest one first, and then the 8, and then the 5. Okay. Just like the other method, anything extra that we can do, we're going to put toward this time the highest interest one. So we'll still make all of the monthly payments, but any extra, so like if we can pay $5 extra, we'll put it toward the one with the highest interest first. Once that one is paid off, we'll still use that monthly payment that we were making for that one, but we're going to now move it to the second highest interest rate. This one, depending on what your debt is, can be really hard to just get that momentum going because typically our highest interest ones tend to be our biggest balances too. Not always the case, but just in general, typically that does happen. So it can just feel like it's taking a lot longer for us to accomplish our goal, but we are going to be eliminating our more expensive debt first. So we could be saving a lot more in this method. Okay. Now, a different method that we can do is consolidation. So if we have a bunch of debt spread throughout where it's just hard to figure out and manage all of these different debts, who I owe here, what's the due date, all of that jazz, we can consider a consolidation. So in this instance, though, we will be taking out a new loan. So we will impact our credit just a little bit for opening up a new loan, okay? We're going to open a new loan for the amount of debt that we want to pay off. and then we will use that loan to pay off those debts. So then now, instead of owing like 5, 7 companies, I only have the one loan that I need to keep track of. So it can just kind of help us streamline what and who do I owe money to. Okay, so it just can kind of be like more of an organizational thing that helps us. It can also be helpful if we have loans that have high interest rates and we can get approved for a loan at a lower interest. We can then save money on that interest piece by getting out that new loan with a lower interest amount and paying off those expensive interest loans, okay? So sometimes that's where it can be really most beneficial for us to consolidate, is if we're able to get approved for a lower loan interest amount. Okay. The other kind of tidbit too here, I will see people consolidate on balance transfers for credit cards and get that 0% APR for balance transfers for X months or whatever. That can also be considered a consolidation where they can kind of help. And let me read this really quickly in the chat. Ooh, yes, we will actually talk about that. And I just want to say I'm so sorry that happened to you. That breaks my heart. So we will talk about those awful companies that are taking advantage of people. So I will kind of bring that up in a little bit as well, okay? Now, refinancing and loan modification are other options for us as well when it comes to debt repayments. So when it comes to refinancing, it will be considered a new credit on our credit report just because it's changing something in we're refinancing, okay? So they are going to pull our credit. So if our credit situation has not improved from when we bought the house or the car, it's not in our best interest to refinance because they're not going to be able to get us anything better if our credit hasn't been improved, okay? So when it comes to refinancing, they are going to pull our credit and our repayment statuses and evaluate, can they give us a better interest rate? Maybe it's the payment schedule that we need to figure out differently, like we need to have a couple months off or something. So refinancing can be very helpful for us. We can get really better interest rates. But again, that caveat, if we haven't improved our credit history or we have a bad repayment status on there, it's not going to be helpful for us. But if we've improved our credit score, we've had awesome repayment and we've shown good faith with it, it can be a really great tool for us depending on the market, okay? Now, a modification is just a change to the loan. This does not hurt our credit because it's just changing something to the original terms of the loan. So when in doubt, if we can do a modification rather than a refinance, that's in our best interest so we don't get that new credit inquiry on our credit report. Sometimes with modifications, it's called re-amortizing a loan. So let's say we're going to get a really awesome tax break and we're going to get money back from the federal government or whatever. And we want to use that chunk of change and put it toward a loan. We can ask them to re-amortize our payments. So then they can apply that amount and then make our monthly payments smaller for us. So that can help alleviate our budgets if we need to. So if you are making a big payment to a loan and you don't necessarily want it to just go to the principal, you want it to amortize for you, you can make your monthly payments smaller for yourself. If I've confused you, that's okay. Just go talk to somebody in a service center. They can explain it a lot better and personalized and like explain a little better visually how that works, okay? Now, to the awful thing that happened to somebody, okay? There are companies out there, especially on the radio and the TV, that advertise that they can help you with your debt, okay? Most of the time they're debt settlement programs, but they can be debt management, but typically we see the ones taking advantage of people be this debt settlement folks, okay? So when it comes to like, if you really need help with repayment and just sitting down and working on your budget isn't enough. You need additional help when it comes to debt management. A debt management plan company can be really amazing to help with. Okay. So, a debt management plan company, I recommend Green Path. So, if you are looking for one, Green Path is a vetted company. They do wonders. Okay. So, they will negotiate on your behalf once you establish this management plan with them. You will continue to make your monthly payments. Okay, so you'll continue to make your monthly payments on all your debt. So you're going to continue your payment history, which helps our credit score. Okay, so we will have a small dip in our credit for getting into a management plan, but we're going to continue building our credit because we're making payment history. Okay, we're making those payments. And then they're going to help us with getting reduced interest rates. They're going to help us maybe with the terms of those loans. They have a lot of manpower and a lot of contracts and people that they're bringing in, so they can negotiate with Visa and MasterCard or whoever and get us really good interest rates so we can have a better idea of how we can pay it off and quicker. Okay. Now, debt settlement program is usually when they do cease and desist kind of letters. They will send everything to collections. Okay, so that's a huge hit on our credit. And then if they do manage to settle for less than what's owed, okay, so if we had $10,000 and it goes to collections and they settle it for us for 4,000, let's say, that $6,000 that they were able to settle out for us, we have to pay taxes on. So it can be a really big tax burden to us, depending on, how much they're settling. So not only do we get that tax kind of hit to us, where we're not really expecting to have to pay that, right? So the tax plus they sent stuff to collections. So our credit goes down quite a bit, okay, during this settlement program. So if you're ever choosing between the two, that's why I do recommend the management plan, just because then that way it doesn't impact our credit score for as long as this debt settlement program does. The debt settlement program impacts our credit for way longer than the debt management plan, okay? So be aware too of those companies that are advertising, because there are so many scams out there for them. Okay. So I always recommend you working with your financial institution that you have a relationship with. So even if it's not with Ent, if you have a relationship with like Westera Credit Union or Navy Federal Credit Union, or even Wells Fargo, they have someone that you can talk to first. And then if they can't help you or figure something out, they can actually refer you to one of their partners, someone that's really vetted, such as Green Path. And that way, you're not going to enter into an agreement with a potential scamming company, okay? Because it hurts for me to read that comment, okay? I don't want you guys to be in that position either. So again, I'm going to leave this here on the screen. So if you do need help with this, we do have people, it's completely free and open to everybody in our communities. You don't need to be an Ent member with us. We can talk through with you how we can help you with debt repayments, how we can help with, building a budget. Or if you need help with your credit score so you can then refinance and get in a better situation, we can help you with tools on how to build your credit. Okay. I went through that a little faster than I thought I did, so sorry, I kind of talked really fast. So let me know if you guys have questions. I'm going to leave this up for a bit longer for you all to kind of, take a picture, whatever you want to do. But again, I'll put it in the chat too. So, yep, gotta push submit. Okay. Let me stop sharing my screen. Oh, I did. Did I stop? Whatever. Okay. Hi, guys. So what questions do you all have? You can message me privately in the chat if you don't want to necessarily ask it out loud, but you want me to answer it out loud, I can do that. Or if you don't mind putting it in the group, that's okay too. But if not, I gave you some more time back, so. Oh, I love to hear that. So yeah, with Ends, we don't have fees for our checking accounts. So I definitely do recommend a credit union over a bank just in that regard. But yeah. How much, oh, thank you for asking that question. So how much time are you allowed for financial coaching? So the first thing, they'll just do a phone consultation with you to set up like, hey, like you signed up with me. When do you want to meet? Do you want to meet in person, virtually, etc.? So they'll do that initial just phone conversation with you. And then we do like an hour. And then, we can do in a week from now, another hour, whatever kind of cadence that you need to just kind of continue checking up on whatever it is that you're working toward. So kind of unlimited hours, I would say. So it's just really up to you on like how often you want to meet with your financial coach, what you want to cover. But the initial one will be an hour, you can expect. And then from there, it's kind of up to you. Thanks guys for the love. Yeah. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Yeah. Um, Love it. So we have 56 service centers across Colorado. So you can definitely find one close to you, hopefully. If not, online is great. So, but thank you all. I hope you learned at least one thing, and if not, just kind of reinforce some of the good habits that you're doing. I did see some people in the chat have really great tips for each other. So I hope you guys kind of read some of those. Uh, yeah. Community is a really big resource, y'all. So I know sometimes talking about finances can be kind of feel like taboo. But now that we've kind of opened the door for y'all, you can kind of maybe broach that topic of like, hey, do you mail? Yeah, how do you do that? Like, and start, those conversations with one another. Oh, okay. So there was a question too. I heard today that credit unions are better to have than using a bank when it comes to fraudulent charges, especially with all the card scammers. I would say it's not necessarily better or worse. I just would say that we probably care a little bit more and will do a lot more to help you through that if you kind of get a scammer happen. So a scammer is like when someone puts a device on top of a pay station and they get all of your card information from it. And it can happen at grocery stores, in the store, etc. So lots of different places. And I wouldn't say one like credit unions are better at it. I would just say we probably care more, so you get more attention with it, and we can help you through that. I will say try and use a credit card if you can at gas stations and things like that, because again, it's not your money, it's the credit card company's money, and they will do all they can to get that money back because again, it's not out of your pocket, if that makes sense. It's on your credit card. Yeah, and yes, so when it comes to scammers, fraudulent stuff, we do our best to catch all of those. We will send some texts and calls. And if you're ever concerned about it, just always give us a call too and let us know, like, hey, I don't know about this, like this happened. Our fraud department will work with you. We have a really huge fraud department, which is awesome to see just that level of care for everyone. So perfect. Well, I do believe there was a survey that we needed to do and then a drawing too.
Yes, thank you guys so much. We will put the survey in the chat. So if you guys could please fill that out before you go. Oh, Aaron posted it too. So there you go. So there is the survey. If you guys could just take a few minutes to fill that out, and then we will pick a random winner for the gift card. And thank you guys so much. I think we were able to figure out everyone's name besides Zoom user. If you could either change your name or put your name in the chat, please, or unmute yourself and let us know who you are so you can get credit for tonight. Um, Portia, can you unmute? Oh, okay. Can you unmute Portia or no?
Technology sometimes too. Clearly.
Sorry. Sorry, Portia can't mute, but she's gonna pick Swiver, Cruz, and Kate for the gift card winners. So I believe Aaron will inbox the winners their gift cards, and I believe that's all we have for tonight. So thank you guys so much for joining. And again, I'm not sure Zoom member if you can you your camera was on, if you could either just inbox us or if you can let us know who you are so you can credit for tonight. But if not, you guys are all good to go. Thank you guys so much for